Hello, beautiful people. I am so excited to be here today. I'm going to try to commit to being a little more authentic on this lovely YouTube. I know you know, life happens, and you know, life happens. So let's talk about this project, about Classically Obsessed. So 4 years in, I am ready to say goodbye to it. And we are going to unpack what happened with this project. It has been both like, it has been a really edifying experience. I will call it that. It has not been, it has not been a torment at all. It just never got off its feet. And there's a couple of things that are like, you know, that contributed to that. Life contributed to that. But this project had survived like 5 moves. I'm not even kidding. I had moved to DC, which was when I started the project or the idea. I moved to back to New York. I moved to Chicago, and then I moved back to New York for a year and a half. And now I am in Mexico City. And I think it's time to kind of, tie off loose ends. We're all in a different, we're in a different place in life. And I think it's time to say goodbye to things that just have not worked out. And there, it's not, it does not feel sad because it was such an edifying experience throughout the whole thing. So let's talk about it. Which is why I'm talking about it now. Like, normally, I don't like discussing my ideas before they come to fruition. But the reality is that, in all likelihood, without funding and without like, and now I left the States. And so, like, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to get funding. It's not being negative. It's just like being realistic. It's like, where are you going to get funding from? And so, like, I have, okay, so first off, right? My original idea for this project was like an auditory immersive experience. I was like, this was when like the whole like 10D, 8D sound was coming out. And I'm like, this is immersive sound. Like, I can literally hear like someone like walking to the other room. I'm like, this is so amazing. This is like going to change storytelling. It has not. Excuse my savage cat. Anyway, so like this is going to change storytelling. It didn't. But regardless, I was just like, no, this is like the key. I want to tell a story. We need a sound designer. I need to, I knew exactly what story I wanted to tell. And this was, mind you, like really what started it off was um Poe, Edgar Allan Poe, which I'm obsessed with him since I was like a kid. My cat is psycho. Um, and so it started with the fall of the House of Usher. Mind you, this was before they announced the show, The Fall of the House of Usher, right? And so I was like, because this has happened to me like several times. Two Broke Girls is basically the play. I mean, it's not like an exact copy, but it is really, really, really similar to a play I produced in New York, or the play that I wrote with my co-writer that got produced in New York. And I really wanted to turn that into like a TV show. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I love it. It was very two broke girls, two very educated girls who just could not figure out life or their finances, and they, end up like stealing from the Met. I mean, it was supposed to be a comedy, right? Um, Luna, stop, psychopath. Anyway, so sorry, I look like a hot mess. I put on makeup for you guys, but like there were things that happened in life. Anyway, um so so this has happened to me several times. So when my niece like sent me like the the screen grab, I was like, what the hell? Like it's happened to me 3 times. I can't even remember the third time it happened. Um, and this like the second time it happened, but this third time I was like I'm committed to put this show up on its feet, mind you. Anyway, it is what it is. So, and which is why I'm discussing it right now, because I don't like discussing ideas before they come to fruition. But I'm pretty sure I'm just like I'm like like we have spent a lot of years on this thing. It doesn't seem like it's gonna go anywhere. So, guys, and that sometimes happens with work. It really is a matter of like how long is too long, right? And I think that there are people that want to work on something 10, 20 years like later, right? Like 20 years on a film. um I am not that person. And so anyway, so it was supposed to be multi seasons, an audio immersive narrative, a storytelling podcast. It was all supposed to be based on like classical stories, ergo the name Classically Obsessed. I think I like got ahead of myself and I did like a little trailer. I was super excited, and I really felt that the this had legs. And so what I started to do was like get funding. I started to get funding before I had even written a script, right? I started, applying for funding, and I got rejected, obviously because you need a script. um, but I also started applying to residencies and to like, places that like and audio labs that were there to really help you kind of um create something, right? And time and again, and I like it's just like failure after failure after failure. After like I want to say 2 years of this, as I was writing the script, because it was like it all kind of coincided, I was like, you know what, let me figure this out on my own, because it just doesn't make any sense to continue to apply for stuff that is just not, you know it's just not. And now with like everything that's happening in the States, I'm Latina, and our work is getting cut, so it is what it is. Anyway, so then um when because originally I was just going to transfer, it was just going to be a direct copy from the original work. But as I was like kind of restructuring it for an audio storytelling, I recognized, I was like, there's a lot of themes here that I could really kind of go wild on. And originally I was like, let me give this to another writer. I got a couple of writers to like write some you know, um like a chapter of something, right? Or like a little thing of like how they would like how they would use the original script in order to create the story. And I told them like, the concept and all of this. And a lot of what I saw was like that. A lot of it was like very kind of shallow. And I don't think that other writers saw what I saw. And I was just like, you know what? I've written things before. Let me see if I can, because I knew that this needed like a real knowledge of structure, because you can't make something like that work without real knowledge of structure, because it'll fall apart, right? Because it is like you need structure to be able to tell a story like that, especially with some of the themes that I was looking at, like the themes of like, there was like themes of abuse, there was themes of like, ignoring like your gut feeling, but also like, and I turned like the narrator into a woman. And so I loved this idea of like having both these narrators, both the sister in the story and the main protagonist, kind of having this like almost like choral component as they were like discussing the story, and it all comes from the perspective of women. So the story comes from a perspective of women, and this, the story, and like there's a backstory of like this girl who was absolutely in love with, Usher, and she goes back in order to like save him from this thing. And I loved this idea of having, instead of having the sister be just an object for really the plot, I wanted her to be a fully fleshed out being, because she was the victim in all of this, right? And so I was like, I was fleshing it out, I was fleshing it out, I was fleshing it out. And so I was like, but structurally, it has never worked. And I knew, and I always kept going back. I was like, okay, I'm trying to get it into this structure, but it's not working. And I even I've taken screenwriting classes before, and I just kept going back to like more classes and more classes in order to find some way to navigate the story and really create a structure that would work, right? Especially because it's fusing his storytelling and fusing mine around it in almost like this like snake-like pattern. And so you go in and out of the story through like all these narratives, and it gets complicated, honestly. And it's not a linear storytelling. And so I don't think it's bad, but I do think it needs some structural work. And then the other thing was like that there's a component of like this, the sister being a victim of some kind of element of abuse. Although Edgar Allan Poe doesn't speak directly to this, he does suggest it. And I just go, like, it's right there. The theme is right there. Let's use it. Let's put it in. And that, I added a dream sequence and all these things, right? All these little horror elements that I wouldn't say are like, oh my God, scary, jump scare. No, but it's mystery and it's tension. And, and because Edgar Allan Poe is so wordy, and I didn't really want to cut his stuff. I wanted to leave it. But he does get really wordy. And there are places in which it drags. And so there's some issues with the script, right? Like there's still some issues with the script. And this isn't about perfectionism, but it is about creating a cohesive storyteller, a cohesive story, excuse me. And so that's been part of it, right? Like this script that I've kind of, been able to transform, but I don't quite know how to broach the subject of, or what that abuse is. And maybe it doesn't need to be told, right? Maybe it can be suggested. But if we have this character now, not as this wispy ghost, or we later found out she is the ghost, right? If we have her telling her story, and also both of them kind of telling each other's stories and how it kind of goes in and out, we can't not broach it. It needs to be discussed, right? It's like the elephant in the room. And I'm like, I don't know what it should be, or where in the story it should be. And so that's been part of it. Right. And so I've been whittling away, whittling away, whittling away for the last 4 years on the script. Right. At the same time, there's a lack of funding. I continued, applying to residencies, applying to audio labs, applying to grants, all of this, rejection after rejection after rejection after rejection. And the truth is, for the idea to really be fully birthed, it needs a sound designer, right? And that's not something that I can learn overnight. As much as I've like taken soundscape classes, trying to figure out, okay, let me see how I can do this on my own. And that's something that I do a lot. But the truth is that this element of this project, it does need someone who is an expert at that. And I am not an expert at, at like sound design. I know what I want auditorily. I know how I want it to, I definitely want to be in the room. I want to, be like, no, I want to hear this. Like, I want the person to walk through the other room. I want to hear her dress rustling and like the girl turning and like trying to, I want it to be an immersive experience. I know that. But to go from there to like knowing what you're doing with like a whole bunch of knobs, that's not me. That's not me, girl. That's not me. And so again, I'm so sorry. It seems like I think it's this thing. I think like I'm not ever going to use what's it called? I'm not using this thing again. I'm using my iPad, and I'll just use my iPhone from here on out, and we'll do it from there. So anyway, we're 17 minutes in. So at this point, I'm just like, okay, we're 4 years into this project. We're basically at the same place where we were at the beginning. Except when now we have more or less a script. And the script does need work, so it would need, like a coach to see how structurally we can like, reform it. Because it is a story that needs structure, especially when you're using this in and out like way of telling the story, right? And I think I've done like a pretty good job. Like I'm not gonna lie, like I'm like proud of myself. I'm like, look at this, like what the hell? Oh, look. Because before this, like I had only done like shorter screen, I've written all my shorts, or the adaptation of shorts. I have, I've done all of that. And I've done like a pilot. I've written a pilot. I co-wrote another pilot. I got like a residency to finish like one of the pilots. I couldn't go. It was in Costa Rica. And again, funding. So, the truth is that art takes money, and it takes kind of whittling away. And we're at the point where it's like, okay, it's no longer about you doing the work yourself, but you need a team, you need funding, you need like, something. You need to work with the people that know to be able to bring this to life fully. And although I feel like I did a pretty good job with the script, it does need that shaping. It does need like kind of, it needs external eyes. And when I like, it's expensive. Like when you look at somebody who's just going to look over your script to tell you like where the weaknesses are, that's really pricey. And so I was just like, you know what? Like we did the best that we can with like the resources we've had so far. I think it's time to go on to other projects. which is unfortunate because I was hoping to get my artist visa at some point with these projects. And like, what am I supposed to show for the last 4 years of my life? Focusing on just this one project. So that's been the story of this show. And how long is too long to focus on a project? I don't think that there is a length of time. I think it's done when you say it's done. I think, when there's a natural stop and you're like, I've done everything I can to bring this project into fruition. Now it either needs to be like the universe, or we're going to put it away for some time. And hopefully someday in the future, we'll have the resources to bring this story back. Um, in the meantime, I'm so proud of myself because I feel like I've become a better writer of stories, a better, like, recognizing tone and writing in tone, right? Like, I had never, well, let's be honest, it's not that I had never done that. I had, but not to the level that this project needed, right? I went and I did soundscape classes. I took classes at my local, like, film, those little film groups. There was one in Brooklyn, there was another one in Manhattan, that they have, like, they offer free classes of stuff. I also, like, paid for several classes to just brush up on things, right? Because when you are writing a script that is beyond your scope of knowledge, beyond your scope, and it isn't that I hadn't ever taken writing classes, right? I had been in writing labs, I had been in all these things, but this is not, this is outside the scope of everything I had ever written. Most of my stories were linear stories. Most of them were a lot of them were adaptations. Some of them were original stories, but they were linear stories. There wasn't like a choral component with a women kind of talking about the story across time and space. It wasn't an auditory thing. It was a visual whatever. It was visual, not auditory. And so you have to think differently about a story based on the medium you're telling it, right? Like, and it's easier when you're like, okay, theater versus film, because it's still a live performance, right? Like, you're still seeing people up on stage and people's bodies are telling the story. But when you don't have visuals and you're actively trying to create visuals in people's heads from the soundscape, from you know, from like how you tell a story, from like text, right? And then you're having to ask, this is getting a little, this part is a little wordy. How can we like create that image in someone's mind a little quicker? These are all things that help you become a better artist, a bit better writer, right? And so I think that was like such an amazing process to have gone through, because I feel like I am a better storyteller today than I was 4 years ago, you know? So did I, miss out on anything? No. Like, I don't feel that. Did anything become of it? Like, no. But sometimes that happens, and I can't be positive of it because this is just my experience as an artist, right? But things happen, and then you need to like recognize. I think it's important to recognize where your limitations are, and you're like, instead of putting something out that is not the vision that you want it to be, maybe because like the immersive part I feel is central to telling the story. The relationship between artist and audience is central, and it's a and in a very weird way, it's a really direct relationship when it's just auditory. You have something on your ears or you're just listening to it, and it's creating a vision in your mind. It is a very personal thing. And I'm not saying that films are not, and I'm not saying that theater is not, but there's a space between you and the actual story. And I think it's really beautiful. I think auditory storytelling is really beautiful in that you are directly in the mind and ears of an audience in a way that is very different with a medium like film and theater. So that's my takeaway. We've been here for 26 minutes. Thank you for being here with me. This has like helped me grow so much. I'm so grateful for this process. It's unfortunate that it didn't go anywhere, especially because you know what, when I was younger, I used to like, I used to be like, no, I'm not finishing that. No. And then as I got older, I was like, no, I must finish this. I can't be somebody that just leaves things to like, wither and die. I must finish this. And I would like put myself through hell to be able to finish a story or to be able to finish a script or to be able to like the point was like to finish it and then to put it out, right? But I had to go through like, no, it needs to be done. It needs to be finished. And so this where I'm leaving this project, it makes me really uncomfortable. But I recognize that as an artist, I learned so much from it and I need to move on to other things. I'm in the process of like doing a short film. Um, this is not the place for that short film. I filmed half of the scenes in New York, and so now I have to finish the other half of the film. And the monologue, because it's based off a monologue, it's not based. I'm using somebody's monologue. Is an amazing Latina playwright who deserves all the props in the world, and I'm deeply grateful to her for like allowing me to be able to do this like little short film around her monologue. It's a funny story about that, but I'll leave it for another day. Anyway, so if you have any takeaways, it is finish something, right? If you can, if it's within your power, right? If it is within your power, finish it and put it out. But you always have a choice, right? Do you limit your vision? And that's the choice, right? Do you limit your vision to just like get the project out there? And I think a lot of people and a lot of like, oh, artist coach, like it doesn't matter that it's perfect. But so here's the thing, does the storytelling lose something if you don't continue with a vision that you originally had? And I'm not talking about, oh, this being a multi-series, because I was perfectly happy with just doing one season. I was perfectly happy with just doing one season of this project. But the point was the immersion, the sound design, how the relationship between storyteller and audience, the direct, like you are in their minds and in their hearts and in their ears. That was exciting, right? As well as exciting to like grow as an artist. It was and the second thing I would say if you're an artist is do things that take you outside of your comfort zone. You know, do a different medium, do something wild, do something that you think you'll fail. Maybe you'll fail, but maybe you'll succeed, and maybe, you know, you'll learn in the process. Even if you fail, even if like there's no funding for the project, even if like no lab wants you near like in a 50 foot range around the project, around their like, you know, whatever, it doesn't matter, because the whole point is your growth as an artist, you know, to do the best you can with, this is like, this is a rule I always have: do what you can with the resources you already have, get the resources you need little by little, and you know, eventually you'll get there. Enjoy the process. Enjoy the process. You know, it isn't a failure. It's, maybe it's not even a like, you know, maybe it's not even a failure. Maybe it's just not right now. Anyway, that's what I leave you with. I apologize for this awful thing. Um I next time I'll like film from my either my iPhone or my camera. I just did not did not charge my camera. Anyway, so that's it for today. Thank you so much. Maybe I'll come back tomorrow, maybe next week, maybe at some point. Yeah, subscribe and do all the things. Bye. Bye.